Okay, welcome everyone to the CHAOSS OSPO Working Group meeting for July 24th. We have decided to go ahead and record this meeting, at least the presentation. We may turn the recording off during the discussion later, so if the recording stops, that's why. I did want to just mention one thing before I turn it over to Ria, and that is that we have a new practitioner guide this is our most advanced practitioner guide ever. It's a long one. All of our practitioner guides so far have been getting started guides. And this is about demonstrating organizational value, which is very much not a getting started topic. So I would encourage you to have a look at this. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, you can still contribute to this guide. So there's no such thing as a guide being done, but these are MIT licensed, so you can take them, do what you want with them. You can fork them and I don't know, customize them for your organization. But in particular, this group, I would be very curious to have your feedback on the guide. So have a look. Let me know if you have any feedback, or feel free to file issues in the Data Science Working Group repository, which is where we do the work on these, or feel free to make pull requests if you want to make changes to it.
Are you posting the link for that in the Slack channel?
I will. Yeah, that's a good idea. I don't think I posted it there, so I'll post it in the OSPO Working Group Slack channel. It is also linked from the meeting
Oh,
minutes,
great.
so you can get it there as well. Um, with that, I think I'll just go ahead and stop sharing and just turn it over to you, Ria, and then you can share your presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm not so used to using Zoom, so be a little patient with me
Yeah,
because
no worries.
I'm more of a Teams person. So,
So Siddharth, sorry,
yeah,
let me just interrupt for a second while you get your sharing. Siddharth, you're absolutely welcome. Anyone is welcome to join these working group meetings. So we're happy to have you here. Um, I guess I'm familiar with the NatWest OSPO. I live in the UK, and so I've talked to James a bunch of times, and I think he's the OSPO lead there. So yeah, so welcome. Thank you. Happy to have you.
let me see if this worked, or if all you get is maybe I should share the other screen.
I see your background. Life and
Okay, that's all you see right now.
Yep.
Let's do that. How's that now?
Nope. Oh, yes. Yes. Got it.
Excellent. All right. Hopefully that's working and that'll stay working. As I said, not so used to using Zoom for sharing presentations. I think this might be my first time. So, welcome and thank you for inviting me to do this, Dawn. I'm really excited to present to the CHAOSS OSPO Working Group. This is a meeting that I try really, really hard to make into my schedule. And unfortunately, we just talked about meeting competition. That's a tough thing to do sometimes. But I wanted to have this time to talk a little bit about scaling open source hygiene with open source and some of the mechanisms I have been engaged in, particularly the SPDX legal group. My name is Ria Farrell-Shelnut. I am the Open Compliance Manager at Hewlett Packard Enterprise. So I'm probably telling you things that you already know, but there's a lot of legislative attention being paid to open source right now. And one of the things that we really want to be able to do is provide developers with as much of an early heads up on their open source choices to both scale their compliance efforts and reduce bottlenecks while also making their code safer and healthier. So there are a lot of tools out there that will help you look for license obligations, license conflicts, whether or not vulnerabilities exist in the code, what the overall security posture is of different open source components, which is one of the really wonderful things about open source, because when you are using closed source, you don't necessarily get a security profile for it. But with open source, you can get an OpenSSF scorecard, or you can develop your own data metrics to determine what the posture of that particular component is. So it really gives you an X-ray vision into what it is you're using to build your products, your solutions, etc. And then, of course, health considerations, which is what CHAOSS is all about. So a few of the things that I have been particularly interested in over the last few years have been the SPDX license identifiers as a way to utilize the SBOM to encourage teams to align with our policies and use those SPDX IDs, license identifiers, to highlight when there is something that the Open Program Office might be concerned with. Clearly Defined has another really important area that they're covering, which is gathering in a centralized hub all of those license attributions and even licenses that have not been identified. Sometimes you go to a repo, whether it's Maven, PyPy, NPM, GitHub, and you'll see license blank. Clearly Defined is taking those components and organizing what the license declarations are using human curation, which is a really fabulous way to enhance your license compliance, especially because some commercial scanners don't always pick up this information. It's hidden in notice files, sometimes in file headers. So Clearly Defined has a really amazing value add to the entire ecosystem. Guac is fantastic. It's an area I really want to engage in much, much more. But my very nascent engagement with Guac got me introduced to Jeff Mendoza, who then created a fabulous SBOM enhancement tool that is also open source. It's called CD SBOM, available on GitHub. And you can take an SBOM and then enhance it with the data from Clearly Defined and update all those no assertions that creep into those SBOMs. And then, of course, CHAOSS, I really don't have to tell you about that because I'm talking to the CHAOSS team here. But I wanted to make sure I mentioned it just because I'm a huge fan of the data metrics as a pre-vulnerability study on open source components, and also highlighting whether or not a particular component might need more engagement. So a little bit about SPDX, because that's where I'm going to be focused on for the rest of this presentation. SPDX is an open standard, and it is primarily used to create that software bill of materials, or SBOM, that we've all been hearing so much about lately. It is an actual ISO standard, and the number is 5962:2021. The part that I focus on in SPDX is the license list. And this is an integral part of the overall SPDX specification and framework that reviews licenses that are found out in the wild, that are attached to a component, that are included in a file header, included in an attribution document. We find these licenses and then we analyze them against the other licenses that have already been incorporated into the SPDX license list. In reviewing those, we're going to assign an SPDX ID, assuming it meets our requirements, a permanent URL, and then a repository so that you can always go to find that consistent standardized license language. To date, more than 700 licenses have been added to the SPDX license list. There's a very flexible framework for whether or not a license can be included. It's a little broader than the OSI list, and I'll get into that in a moment. If you want to engage in the project, we have lots of collateral that you can use to facilitate analyzing these licenses, there's a very handy review checklist. And there is also two mechanisms that they provide license comparison tools by. This is a super helpful mechanism because otherwise, what I used to do in the past was copy license text of one, copy the license text of the other into two separate docs, and then compare them to get a red line. This tool will just let you highlight that license language in whatever website you're finding it in, run the tool, and it'll bring a pop-up to show you the closest license that SPDX was able to find that matches that license language, how much or what percentage of a match it is, and also provide that red line to you. So that's a really helpful tool for just general license analysis, but also we use it frequently when we're deciding whether or not to add a new license to the license list. It's available in website form. You can scrape the license language, and that might be necessary if you're reviewing it in, say, a PDF or some non-internet accessible archive. And then you can just drop that language straight into the website and it will run the test, or you can highlight it and then use the Chrome plugin. By the way, you can see some of these are underlined. I can provide this slide deck to you at the end, Don, and all the license links and all the tool links are at the end of this presentation. So there are specific factors that we're going to look at when we're deciding whether or not to add a new license and assign an SPDX license ID to that license. Number one, if it's OSI approved, we automatically include it. If it matches another license already on the list, we're not going to add it because we don't want to have endless license proliferation. And I think that is one of the advantages that this provides. While 700 plus licenses is a lot of licenses, there was a period of time when people went crazy with having their own bespoke license that really differed from some standardized license with nothing more than the title of the license. And it's just silly to add those in to the system and have that level of license proliferation. So it does control some of the chaos, pardon the pun, of all those licenses. We want to make sure that the licenses apply to the entirety of the code. If they only apply to the executable and not source code, then they will not be included in the SPDX license list. It needs to have stable text. So if there are multiple versions of that license available and they all have different text, that's probably not a good candidate for the license list, because one of the key value adds that SPDX provides is that repository of stable license language. And finally, we want to make sure that whoever the license steward is, if they're able to be identified, is not going to modify that text for the same reason. We want consistent license language. We have various matching guidelines. Now, I want to be really clear that these are not legal interpretations. We are not engaged in any kind of legal assessment of the meaning of the license language. That is the purview of your counsel, your team's lawyers. Go to them if you want to know what the license means. But we do look to assess whether or not there are certain pieces of the license that are non-substantive from a legal standpoint in assessing whether or not there's a match already on the license list. And some of the things that we'll include in there are the copyright notice, the title, and specific names of people within the license. Those are non-substantive from a legal standpoint in terms of license interpretation. So if you have a BSD license and it's crediting person X, and another license that says it's the BSD-Y license and it's crediting person Y, Well, that title and those person designations, they're not legally substantive for license interpretation. So those would be considered equivalent licenses. We have some licenses that have texts that are not legally determinative. They might be things like thanking their mother for the inspiration they provided in creating that code. That's not legally determinative. So that's the type of license that we can put into optional brackets or just omit when we're assessing whether or not it's a match for another license in the SPDX license list. And then we'll look at things like non-substantive formatting, spelling, punctuation. We don't consider those to differ the license as long as there isn't something about the punctuation that materially changes the meaning of that sentence. In general, we're very, very conservative. If there is anything that approaches legal interpretation, we will give it a separate SPDX ID because we want you and your lawyer to make those determinations for yourself. I have a quick start. Really, it's 5 simple steps to assess an SPDX license, and we have an issue board where you can filter to new license exception requests. Look at those license inclusion principles. I covered the main points, but there's a few more on the main site. Get yourself a GitHub ID so you can engage in the repo. Pick an issue. Determine if it matches another license, and you can use the handy tools we have for that. Look at the review checklist, and then either give it a +1 or a thumbs down. If you are concerned about some language in there, add a comment. Every contribution is valued and considered when we are looking at reviewing an issue and determining whether or not to assign an SPDX license ID. And then once that determination is made, pat yourself on the back. That's the easiest one of all. You just helped everyone scale their open source license compliance just a little bit easier. We have open discussions. Unfortunately, I think they conflict with this meeting, but we do also work asynchronously. So you can also just opine on issues on GitHub, and we will consider your comments when we do review those particular licenses in our meetings. The meetings are led by Steve Winslow at the Linux Foundation and Jelaine Lovejoy at Red Hat. They are tireless in their passion for getting these licenses categorized and evaluated. We meet twice a month, and the invites are available on our GitHub page. These are the resources I mentioned, and I'll be happy to share this deck at the end, Dawn, so that you can post it and everyone can have it for their consumption. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, so we can go ahead and open it up for questions. I tell you what, let me do one thing before we open it up, 2 things before we open it up for questions, because I'll turn the recording off for the discussion. But I did want to have a couple of reminders that we're also canceling all of our meetings in August. So the CHAOSS meetings are canceled. This meeting is going to be canceled. So enjoy your August break from meetings. And then I also wanted to remind people that, we are looking for speakers for the September meetings. So I have one topic. There was an interesting Slack thread that's linked in the minutes about OKRs and KPIs for OSPOs. So we'll probably, so Chris Short published that Slack thread with the question. So I'll probably bring that in as a discussion item, maybe not a presentation. But if you have any other ideas for presentations for September, either ping me or mention them in one of the Slack, the working group, working group, OSPO working group Slack channels. Yeah, cool. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna stop the recording and then we can have a discussion.